It's the larceny that USAID has conducted. Crooked NGOs around Washington, D.C. swindling American taxpayers out of their money. A recent audit found that USAID's implementing partners were using upwards of 50% of their grants for overhead costs, not life-saving measures. The administration has said that the aid pause is temporary, and they have proven it. The recipients of USAID programs, they can apply for a waiver. I have a list with me. Many have applied, many have been denied, and some have received waivers that actually proved their work was life-saving. Let me give a warning to my colleagues. It will be short-sighted of you if you turn a blind eye to USAID's betrayal, and more broadly, the betrayal within the State Department. Because we are going to bring in the people who put these programs in place. We are going to show to the American people exactly what they were doing. The videos, the documents, the everything, they are going to see it. Like $25,000 for a drag show seminar for Venezuelan migrants in Ecuador, and we are going to show you that video.
Previously served at USAID for International.
PEPFAR saves lives! Restore AIDS funding now! PEPFAR saves lives! Restore AIDS funding now! PEPFAR saves lives! Restore AIDS funding now! PEPFAR saves lives!
Restore AIDS funding now. PEPFAR saves lives. 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 Restore AIDS funding now.
I guess these guys don't watch the news. They didn't realize that PEPFAR was one of the many programs that did prove to be life-saving, so the funding was restored. Somebody better give them a link to, I don't know, maybe Fox News or something like that.
And this hearing is just beginning. Accountability is coming. Thank you also to our witnesses today. The corruption going on behind USAID's doors has been a wake-up call for all Americans. As chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, I spent the last 2 years exposing the Biden administration's sabotage of our border and the policies that kept America safe. I saw firsthand their willful refusal to protect this country. Under the guise of foreign aid, USAID has been an unapologetic front for a far-left agenda. It has become self-evident there weren't a handful of foolish policies, but rather a coordinated strategy of radical, idiotic, and often anti-American priorities. Idiotic, you say? Millions to teach Moroccans how to make pottery? The Moroccans were making pottery before we were a country. This entire debate today and the crocodile tears from Democrats just goes to show what's wrong with this town. Not a single Democrat I've heard has expressed dismay at the many examples of crazy, wasteful spending. I don't understand the objection to a deep dive in how we spend our money, but perhaps it's the fact that over the last several weeks, a massive surge has occurred in the search for a criminal defense attorney. That probably says it all. 5 times in this city, any other city in the nation. I'd like to remind the committee that President Kennedy unilaterally created USAID through an executive order in 1961. Yet the President Trump, orders a momentary pause after winning a mandate for reform, and Democrats cry, constitutional crisis. This is after 4 years of reckless spending and unrepentant lawlessness from the Biden administration. I want the American people to understand how this works in Washington. As long as you're spending other people's money, no one bats an eye. But the second you want to save taxpayer dollars, the swamp cries wolf, or in this case, unprecedented constitutional crisis. This breathless, fake outrage from the left is utterly insane. And you know what the American people, you know they can see right through it. The generosity of Americans and the blessing of giving aid to others has always been one of our most valuable tools for diplomacy. The American people have a proud history of championing aid to our fellow man, but lawless bureaucrats have poisoned that goodwill. Many USAID programs are wasteful and actively sabotage our diplomatic relationships by forcing woke ideology on our partners. Just look at PEPFAR, a beacon of hope in the fight against HIV/AIDS, yet the Biden administration even weaponized this crucial program, jeopardizing lives and undermining our relationship with African nations. Under Administrator Powers, our message to Africa was explicit, as it was heinous. Abort your babies and violate your religious convictions, or we won't grant you life-saving aid. Let me be crystal clear to those who've been complicit in this betrayal. Firing those involved is just a start. We have a long way to go. And one last point. I want to correct the record on a couple of things. First, Elon Musk and the team that is working does not have access to personal data. They don't have access to your social security number. That is a lie. Elon Musk does have a security clearance. He has a top secret security clearance. By God, he makes the rockets for NASA. But the suggestion that he somehow can't be trusted to dig into how we're spending our money is nothing but a smokescreen to hide the corruption and the wasteful spending that has occurred there. And I am personally offended at the left's continued references to 19-year-olds and 21-year-olds in there doing work. There are 19-year-olds who have won the Medal of Honor defending this country. Just because you're 19 doesn't mean you're some child who can't be trusted. It is offensive. And if you're 19 years old out there, 20 years old, and you're serving this country, by God, your service matters. Keep serving. We thank you for that.
Hey, Mr. Natsios, I want to interrupt you for just a second because there was an example of funding to help LGBTQ communities in Uganda. In Uganda, the death penalty was proposed for gay people. Is that considered woke? Is that what they're using as an example of woke, is helping gay people because they're under the threat of death by their own government?
Any violence against any person is not acceptable. So I understand what you're saying.
So you would be for that funding then?
What I'm saying is that we're dealing with very conservative society, Muslim and Christian, and we need to respect not what you're talking about, because that happened, I think, in reaction to us, actually, because it wasn't there before. But let me just say that AID gives $1 billion a year to Christian NGOs, evangelical, Pentecostal, Roman Catholic, my church, the Orthodox Church, and mainline Protestant, $1 billion a year. All those programs are now frozen. They've laid off.
That President Trump has fired the Inspector General of this agency. Thank goodness for President Trump for firing an Inspector General for not exposing what Elon Musk has exposed with this waste. Are these programs what hardworking American taxpayers should be funding? But let me focus on Uganda because my colleague from Texas raised that issue, a country that has thousands of soldiers fighting for our counterterrorism interests against al-Shabaab in Somalia. And that country was severely punished by the Biden administration for signing its anti-homosexuality law into law in May of 2023. The Biden administration revoked Uganda's AGOA eligibility, enacted visa restrictions on Ugandan individuals, and pressured the World Bank to prohibit new public financing. Despite this, USAID has provided a $600,000 grant to, quote, empower Uganda's LGBT community to push back against this legislation, and a $5.4 million grant to shift public perception and attitudes in Uganda towards LGBT acceptance and to train LGBT individuals on the skills needed to engage in the economy. Now, in Uganda, China is expected to finance the $5 billion East African crude oil pipeline directly because Western leaders and the World Bank are walking away from the project because the Biden administration's response to their own domestic legislation. Mr. Pramarak, should taxpayer dollars go toward penalizing countries like Uganda for making their own internal domestic political decisions on social issues that one administration doesn't agree with, which in turn strengthens countries' relationships with our adversaries like the communists in China?
Initially, I think the idea behind USAID was done with a good intention. However, we've come to find out that the agency has indeed, to a certain extent, operated in a rogue capacity. And USAID has absolutely broken the trust with the American people and not been transparent about where our taxpayer dollars are going. There's an individual by the name of Mike Benz. He actually served over at the State Department for a while, and he's been going on to expose a lot of what USAID has been doing, which, being a member of oversight and being on this committee, I wanted to verify and see if he was telling the truth, which, much to my disappointment, he was. And I say that because I'm disappointed that our taxpayer dollars are funding some of these items. I mean, to just put this in perspective, in 2021, the Special Operations Command under Mark Milley, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs, put out an instruction manual, a vision for 2021 and beyond, that contained instructions and examples on how the military could work with the State Department, Intel Services, and USAID using race riots. Here's examples of some of the instruction manuals here, 1 and 2, in order to destabilize nations. In addition to that, they advocated for setting up job fairs near some of these riots so that disaffected workers could gain employment. Now, as a member of Congress, I asked myself, did anyone in USAID get elected to Congress? How about to a presidency? When you are acting in the shadows and you are destabilizing nations using race wars to do it and then advocating that the military does it, in my opinion, not only do you put the future generations that would have to fight those wars in jeopardy, but at the end of the day, you're operating without any oversight. So I guess the question for you guys is, Mr. Natsios, is that something that you were aware of? Are you aware that that instruction manual is being promoted not just with the military under Milley, but that USAID may be operating in this capacity? Because in my opinion, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of many of my constituents, I don't think that's where our taxpayer dollars need to be going.
Well, I completely agree with you. Personally, I doubt very much that what you've been told is accurate. But let me just...
Well, look, I'm telling you right now, I brought the receipts, okay? And the reason, I'm not trying to argue with you, but I find this disturbing on so many capacities. And I would like to also just, if I can, sir, Mike Benz, what he's exposing and bringing receipts, I've confirmed it. Thank you for doing that on behalf of the American people, because I understand that when you take on the intelligence agencies, We're also now finding that apparently in this manual that they're also advocating for social media campaigns illuminating controversy to a global audience. I mean, using disinformation campaigns. Is this happening here in our own country? Where's the oversight?
Just to ask you, who in the agency, what bureau?
I just said you can actually find that instruction in this manual that Millie
Military
approved.
manual.
Yes, but Millie approved it. You have it right here. USAID working with government agencies. I mean, this is not.
Wait a second. Did AID say that, or did the military say
Well,
that?
that would be the question for you, sir.
Well, I
mean,
don't
these
think AID
operations.
wrote that.
Sorry to interrupt you. These operations that are taking place without government oversight, without the authority of the president, without the authority of Congress. Real men and women serve and they die because of stuff like this. When you destabilize nations without any oversight, we have to fight those wars. You have our chairman right here that literally risked his life. No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm frustrated. I know it's not necessarily your fault.
I'm telling you,
but
it's
as a head of the agency, that's
I'm
not.
telling what Ben's told you is nonsense.
That's not nonsense. These are the information
AID
forms, and
didn't write
Ben's
that.
put this out to the American
AID
people.
did not
Sir,
write that.
Sir, I disagree with you on so many levels, and I appreciate you being
How do
here
you
today.
know
but
they
it's not
wrote
easy. How do I know what?
Any person can write AID's name into a manual. It goes on all the
Sir,
time.
they are advocating that the U.S. military
But
work with
it's not
taxpayer funded
AID.
State Department USAID funds to destabilize nations. That is
Someone
unacceptable.
special-
I don't care who wrote it. USAID needs to come down and condemn it. They need to provide oversight to Congress on exactly where our tax dollars are going. And I know I might be at 17 seconds with our time, but sir, I hope that you agree. Can I, yes or no, do you agree that this is wrong? Period.
I
Should
think
this be
the
happening?
1961 by President Kennedy, long having lost, strayed from its mission, lost its direction. Even the Clinton administration tried unsuccessfully to reform it. And we spend, I don't know, somewhere between $40 and $50 billion annually on this organization. And with the things that you hear, well, many of us, probably most of us in this room, agree with projecting America's power for the good of all the world around the globe. But a couple things here. We left Afghanistan, and I'll just I'll characterize it as left in August of 2021. August of 2021. So the Taliban's in charge. The Taliban threatens the lives of the NGO personnel distributing USAID. They claim credit for USAID distribution. They interfere with the distribution of USAID aid. They tax the beneficiary of the aid. They tax the delivery service. They steal the food commodities. They divert the funds. They extort citizens for protection for USAID aid. They create sham procurement schemes, and they threaten the lives of those who oppose those schemes. Now, that all occurred before August of 2021, when we were there. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You can just read. The Taliban is classified, and if you don't know, the Taliban's in charge of Afghanistan. They're classified as a specially designated global terrorist organization by OFAC. So post-2021, so this is last year, 2024, we spent $697 million of the taxpayers' dollars in Afghanistan, including $534,719,000 in change from USAID in Afghanistan. I don't know what we think we're going to change in Afghanistan. We lost 22,000, lost or wounded 22,500 Americans in Afghanistan over the course of our term there in the war, spending over $2 trillion. We're just going to keep on spending because somehow we think it's going to get better. And if you're wondering who's in charge of Afghanistan getting the money, and that money I just mentioned, the $697 million is on top of, in addition to the weekly to every 10-day shipments in cash of $40 to $80 million. Afghanistan is ruled by folks named Sarajuddin Haqqani. Haqqani network mean anything to anybody in the room? How about Abdullah bin Laden, who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS-Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding. If you think that the program under Operation Enduring Sentinel, entitled Women's Scholarship Endowment, which receives $60 million annually, or the Young Women Lead, which gets about $5 million annually, is going to women, who, by the way, if you read the Inspector General's report, is telling you that the Taliban does not allow women to speak in public. Yet somehow you're believing, and American people are supposed to believe, that this money is going for the betterment of the women in Afghanistan. It is not. You are funding terrorism, and it's coming through USAID. And it's not just Afghanistan, because Pakistan's right next door. USAID spent $840 million in the last 20 years on Pakistan's education-related program. It includes $136 million to build 120 schools, of which there is zero evidence that any of them were built. Why would there be any evidence? The Inspector General can't get in to see them. But you know what? We doubled down and spent $20 million from USAID to create educational television programs for children unable to attend the physical school. Yeah, they can't attend it because it doesn't exist. You paid for it. Somebody else got the money. You are paying for terrorism. This has got to end. I yield.